This is Swan from Swan Amity Studios. This is our second video in irregular binding edges, dealing with outside angles that are non-90 degree angles and inside angles that are non-90 degree angles. So let's take a look at where we begin. This is all just fine for us right now. No need to worry about that. But before we begin flipping over and stitching down on the back side, we need to deal with that interior portion that we didn't stitch down when we did part one. So let's take a look at that. First, we're going to start by folding that edge over so that it's straight in line with the top. See how we're seam and we're running right along to the point there where the other seam is, right there. And we're going to set up to make sure that we stitch down appropriately by first just taking our thumbnail or anything that has maybe a nice flat edge, like one of our rulers, and just kind of giving it a firm crease, a little bit like that. And if you have a nice thumbnail, you can do that with your thumb, just like that. And all we're doing is creasing the fabric, strong crease, so that when I flip over to the back, I'll be able to see where that crease is. See where that crease is right there. I just want to be able to visualize the crease because that's going to give me my indication of where to stitch down without having to pre-mark anything in advance. So here we're going to start from that inside point where we left off with a little back stitch, and we're going to stitch that towards where we did our back stitch to begin again. As we come up through the fabric layers, we're wanting to hit the mark of that crease that we made for ourselves so that we see that we're in the right line and we're making a nice straight line towards that section. And I kind of go back and then forward, a little bit of a longer stitch, down in, back up, so we can all stay on the top side. But see, that's a lot of space right there, so we need to go back in and continue along until we get to where we left off. Almost there. Now notice it's not a whole lot of space. It should be about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of space. More than that, you probably could have folded back just a little bit more tightly and had less space that you had to hand stitch. We're going to leave ourselves a little knot inside the edge of the binding. And I like to just kind of leave myself a little side stitch there so that when I trim off, that tail is going to kind of stay where it belongs. And now we're going to get ready to stitch the binding over. But notice that's stitched straight into place, and then on the other side we now have a secure edge on our binding. That's going to stay where it belongs, and it's going to look nice and straight just like the rest of our binding. So we're going to flip to the back now and take a look at what it looks like to make that a nice little point. Now I like to use either a binding clip or a little hair clip so that I don't have to keep track of all of my edges lining up as I go along. Here we're coming up to that little corner. That's our interior angle. We're going to make just a small snip into that space, not a big one, about 1/8 inch. And now we're going to bring the first edge in. As we do that, we're going to be folding the binding right in line with the seam. There's the seam, there's the binding fold, and we're just going to carry that fold forward to the back. So there's the fold happening just like that. If you are worried that's going to pull out on you, now's the time to just stick a little pin right in there so that fold stays in place. Pull that over to the back. We're carrying that fold forward, and we're going to start by putting a pin right into the space. See, I keep my finger over that fold so it's not going anywhere. I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to put it right into the point. That's where my binding changes direction. See how my pin locks that little fold into place, turning that edge. And I'm ready to put a few more clips in there. We're coming up to our outside angle. Here's our outside angle. This is less work actually than the inside angle. We're just going to pull that over the top. The fold kind of just creates itself when you pull it over from the top. I'm going to put one more clip there. And I'm going to put a little pin right into the point, right there. As I turn the edge, I actually want to come just a little bit beyond where that point is and put one more clip. Now I can play with this point and make it look perfect. So as I come to this point, I want this edge to line up right where that pin lands in the stitch line. And so I'm going to fold it over, not all the way like we would a 90-degree angle, but just a little bit in there until this point allows the fold to land right in line with that 60-degree angle, right in the center of the 120-degree corner that we're turning. And we pin into place. Okay, so there's our fold. Right in line. Look how nice that looks from the front, and it looks lovely from the back. Here's our interior one. Little fold, not much, little fold, but a nice corner, defined corner. Flip that over from the back. We see a nice edge on the back too. Little fold, not too much. Let's stitch out just the folded portions so we see what you want to do a little bit differently than you might do with your average 90-degree turn. I'm going to bring my needle in, right in that fold. Let me tie a knot first, how about that? There we go. Little quilter's knot. If you haven't seen our video on how to make a quilter's knot, you can check that out as well. This time, how about that? Okay, knot in the thread. We're going to come through, and we're going to start by coming into the fabric, making our stitch just like we normally would. I use a little bit of a hidden applique stitch with my binding, and my needle is coming out right where my pin is. Haha. I'm going to go directly down where the pin was into that point, and I'm going to flip my piece over, and I want to come out with my needle where the beginning of my top fold is. Just like that. I'm now going to stitch towards the fold, grabbing the edge of the fold with my needle and going back down into the binding fabric, coming out in that top corner. And we're going to stitch straight back into the back of the binding. I'm out in the fold again. And if you need to use your needle to just kind of make that fold more apparent, you can tuck that fabric in and continue along. Eventually bringing your needle right back in to the edge there. Okay, so I'm back in the edge of the binding, just like that. And we would continue along. Let's take a look also at what we would do differently with that outside corner. So stitching the outside corner, we're going to remember to put a knot in the needle this time in the thread. We're going to come up to that space as well. And we're going to treat it very much like we would a regular 90-degree angle, regular 90-degree corner. So I'm bringing my needle out right ahead of turning the corner. Take the pin out of the bottom section, and I'm going to bring my needle straight down into where the point connects, bring it out in the back, top of the quilt. And just like we did before, we're going to stitch so that we're just bringing that fold stitch down, very much like a little applique stitch. Coming to the back side, we're now going to stitch again right through that back section. I've managed to double up my thread here. There we go. Right through that back section, just like that, all the way back to the corner. Just nailing that fold into place. Now, if you're not doing a show quilt, you don't really need to nail that fold into place. But if you're doing a quilt and you intend to show it, that's a little something they look for. Bring that back down in and continue stitching along. Now what that has done for you is nailed both of those things into place. Nice, neat corner, both on the top and on the back side. Everything lining up and covering your line of stitching that's the attachment for your binding. Nice, neat corner here. Nice, neat corner in the top. Now, like we say in some of our classes, it's a little extra work. You have to decide, is it worth it? Sometimes I like to say, this is what I'm looking for. It's worth it. So a little extra work, a little bit of handwork in it, but a very beautiful interior corner and a very beautiful, larger than 90-degree outside angle. I think that was worth it. Thanks for watching. This has been another video from Swan Amity Studios. You can find other ones of our videos on the website, and you can also look us up on YouTube, Swan Amity Studios. Go ahead and subscribe. We'll let you know when the next video comes out.